We are going to be talking about stuff that is useful. Is that
right, Ben? Yep, that's the measure.
We do hope we talk about useful stuff. On that note of usefulness, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this morning and spending this next 30 minutes as we talk about happy pricing and certain aspects around, or themes and topics that we're interested in terms of happy pricing. We find it really helpful if you could just answer a poll that I've just shared on Crowdcast. There's a little polls section on the platform. If you just tap onto there, there's a little question there. The question we're asking about basically, well, what's motivating you when you're thinking about happy pricing and coming onto these webinars and maybe receiving our emails? What kind of stuff is most front of mind? Is it this idea of the relationship to money and how that, really tackling that? Or is it purely tactics and strategies and you want to just sort some stuff out in terms of get some immediate silver bullets, nuggets, ideas to help you price better? So that I'd be really appreciative if you could just share your thoughts and ideas or your preferences in the poll. I was actually talking to someone yesterday called Mark Stedman. He runs a platform called Podient. He helps creators essentially launch and grow their podcasts. And I've been engaging with him to find out, just kind of like, how do we do this podcast thing a bit more effectively? Because a lot of the time, we love emergent conversations like this,
making it up as you go along.
Exactly. Oh, it's it's the joyful art of winging it. But and then it's turning it into something that people find useful. And that's the tricky thing, because the live thing is great, and then when you listen to something recorded, is that a different experience? He talks about, actually, this is interesting if you're interested in podcasts. There's the live experience, which is a lean forward experience, and there's the recorded experience, which is the lean back, and then how you design the audio experience based on that. Anyway. That's just a little thing there. And I only say it because I'm trying to work out how to make these conversations as useful as possible, so that whether you're live or not, you're going to get something out of it. And we hope today you'll get something out of it. But if you are listening live, please say hello, like some guy called Ben. And I'm trying to see if I pronounce your name correctly. Ya or Jar or Yarwol. I'm sorry if I totally got that wrong. But anyone else out there who's listening live, please say hello. And please also check out the poll. Okay. Today, what are we talking about, Ben?
Good question. You caught me on the spot there. I actually momentarily completely forgot what we were talking about. But we are talking about a bit of appreciation, I think, saying thank you, and how we sort of shift the balance a little bit between, well, actually, no, now that I'm speaking, I'm really remembering what we're talking about, which I guess is convenient. So going back to last week, without sending everyone back there, we were asking the question last week about the extent to which money was flowing. And Sam, who joined us, said money was flowing out more than it was flowing in. And I think that just kind of sort of sparked the thought, the kind of the idea that, of course, that kind of feels true for lots of us all the time, because we tend to kind of notice the money going out, whether it's going out at home because whatever, on all of the many ways money can go away. And that tends to capture a lot of our kind of headspace, a lot of mind space. And we tend not then to actually take much time to notice the many times that actually money does come in. And of course, it may not be completely in balance. It may not be very much in balance at all. But, for all of the money that's going out, for everybody here and beyond who is doing their work, running their businesses, there is also lots of times when the money is coming in. And I think the thing that we were then talking about, which kind of felt really kind of interesting actually, is actually the kind of opportunity that comes from giving that moment, the moment when these shekels cross the threshold back to you, giving that moment a bit of kind of space, a bit of thanks, a bit of appreciation, a bit of gratitude, actually kind of frees you up a little bit. It kind of opens a lot of opportunity for you. It allows you to sort of start thinking and acting a little bit more creatively. And a lot of what we're talking about in these conversations, what we talk about on the course, and what we kind of randomly talk about to anybody else who will listen, is of course the opportunity to engage with your work, engage with your clients, engage with your customers from this kind of more creative, joyful place, because actually that then translates to the opportunity to kind of price a little bit more creatively, because the general work of the course and everything is about how we better share in the value that we create. And I think you kind of summed it up when we were talking before really well. Actually, it's kind of very difficult to be in a sort of kind of friendly, open, exploratory conversation with our clients and customers if actually we're just really fucking thinking, I need to win this above all else. I must win this piece of work. I must get this new client. Not a very creative way to go into a conversation, pricing, selling, or otherwise.
And I think that so on the course, we talk a lot about tactics and strategies, and we didn't spend as much time on the underlying stories and beliefs. And I believe, I think with these webinars, we get more chance to explore some of the motivations and the blockers that might stop us from actually implementing the clear, simple, maybe not easy, but simple tactics and strategies that you can take. So what we'd like to do today is trying to talk about the gratitude, the abundance, for me, the idea of how we can allow money to flow and let it feel like it's flowing rather than imposing this idea of like it's always going away. And then how that links back to what you can do when you're actually doing some pricing. So I think two topics that spring to mind when you're talking about is firstly about positioning and how pricing actually it starts to put a message out already, the way you price. And then actually taking more of a share in the value that you create. And the more value that you can talk about, or the more value that you can get the customer to see, the more likely you can share in that value as well. And then that would feel like, in my head, when you think about the petrol tank suddenly going down because everything's flowing out rather than coming in, maybe it starts to not even just go up, it just stays in a level that you feel great and it's flowing through. Or maybe even the petrol tank no longer exists and you are just flowing. So I think we're going to talk about this idea at a kind of an energetic level, but we will try and then link it to what it is that you can do when that energy feels right. So that's our intention for this conversation. For anyone who is new to these webinars, who this is the first time you're here, or you'd like to just be able to catch up on past webinars or be alerted of new ones that come up, there is a mailing list that we have for people who are interested in the Happy Pricing course, who want to download the manifesto. And also we have this thing called the Happy Pricing Canvas, which reminds me, Ben, we should probably talk about that one time.
That would be sensible. We're only 8 weeks into the webinar.
And we have never talked about the Happy Pricing Canvas. So that's something we can talk about. But if you want to look at that, get an early glimpse of that, there's a link to sign up to the mailing list. Follow that link, and then you'll be able to get the copy of the manifesto and the Happy Pricing Canvas and explore that on your own. But for now, I call this gratitude and abundance. And maybe, I don't know, are there any stories that you have around how you've not shown gratitude or shown gratitude to this whole idea of money coming in? And then there's the experiences that spring to mind, Ben.
Yeah. So something was just in mind from the two things that you said before that we were going to sort of talk about. And we're talking about position. You mentioned the thing about positioning. I will come back to the question you just asked me. I thought it was worth reiterating that point because I think it's something we've sort of spoken about a lot. And I know from part of the reason I kind of got into this whole journey of being really curious about this, aside from running my own business for 15 years, so getting a handle on money was clearly important. But one of the kind of little gateways in was this kind of just rude awakening kind of understanding of actually how important pricing is as a signal that says either we are the same as everybody else the same, we do the same things that other people do, or we do different things that other people do. A signal that says either I am safe to buy or I am risky to buy. So I just kind of reiterate that point because it can't really sort of overstate that enough. Really, pricing is a hugely important signal, and because we have built into our culture really this sort of thing which says expensive things are high quality and cheap things are lower quality. And that's, separate from affordability and all these things. But unfortunately, that is a lens that lots of people come with. And so, it is really important to keep that in mind. Anyway, that was just in reference to something that you mentioned before. Your question around examples where I may have, been operating from a kind of full tank or an empty tank, to take that analogy. Yeah. And I think that, for lots of the time, actually, when I was running Free State, my last business, actually, it was a little bit from a kind of a more empty tank, because the kind of feeling was there was a need to win work. And of course, there is a need to win work because we had salaries, we employed quite a lot of people. There was all of those things which are kind of very real pressures. We needed money, they need money, people need money because that's kind of important to how we live. So actually, there were a lot of those kind of pressures, and those pressures kind of lent a lens, if I can sort of say, of which is a little bit kind of empty tank, because it was a kind of need, quite hungry, got to win, got to get this job, got to make this happen. And of course, that's a very empty tank perspective, and also it's quite a stressful perspective too. It's quite a stressful place to be. It's quite hard to really engage in a constructive way with prospective clients when there's a bit of a voice behind which just says I've got to win this. So that's kind of operating from a that kind of more empty tank perspective. Some of the ways that I then sort of tried to sort of shift that, challenge that a little bit, was to kind of reframe a little bit the kind of role of money in kind of many respects. So there's kind of a few different things. There's kind of I have some personal practices which just kind of help kind of refocus my mind onto things that I'm grateful for, things that I'm thankful for, which are kind of just sort of things that I do, whether in the evening or whatever, which are just a reminder basically of sufficiency. And I find those things kind of very helpful. But also just in running my last business, it was, just occasionally taking an audit of some of the really useful things that we had done with money that was coming in. So the many, many salaries that we had paid and continued to pay, the very significant amounts of money that we invested in other partners who we worked with, whether they were contractors we worked with or whatever. So there were all of these sorts of things which just kind of refocused the lens a little bit. It became less about, shit, we've got to win this work because we have to do it. And that was sort of the focus, to sort of just understanding a bit more of the flow and taking time to enjoy that flow a little bit, so that then you kind of get a feeling when you get a big new client or a small new client or whatever it might be, everything that sort of comes with it, it's kind of understanding, oh, look, these are all of the good ways that this money is spent. This is how this is invested, all of the positive things that change as a result of this flow. And I think that's probably just one example which kind of shifts a little bit. And when you kind of have a bit more of that going on, it kind of changes the relationship to prospective clients. It changes the relationship to sort of conversations you're having about work and all of those sorts of things. So I guess, does that kind of answer the question that you asked me?
Yeah, it answers the question well, but and it also just sparks up a whole set of ideas in my head. So going back to what you said around, pricing being a signal to people.
Yeah.
So there's this implicit idea that, okay, if they charge a lot of money, then it's higher value. And that seems like a simple thing. Just, I can remember as an agency, double your prices, double your prices. You can double your prices. And I think part of the hesitancy is that enough value? Am I providing enough value? So that's one thing. And for me as an agency, like, am I valuable enough? Which is like, And then the other thing I think I felt, and I think other people may resonate with this, is guilt. It's like, actually, am I allowed to receive this money? Is it right for me to double my prices, even though I haven't done anything different, for instance? What that links to for me from the stuff you talk about on the course is, firstly, it's not up to me to decide what's valuable or not necessarily. it's up to the customer. So, and I need
Mhm.
to be able to agree with that. So, increasing my prices, I shouldn't feel guilty if they're getting the value, and I only know that if I talk to them. So that's
Mhm.
one thing, and the thing we stress about in the course. And then the other thing is, and I remember Lena, who was on the Happy Pricing course last year, who talked about. I think she reframed this idea of giving discounts to
Mhm.
investing in a particular client.
Mhm.
So in my mind, it's like if I'm able to charge more because I've priced more powerfully, but also removed some of that guilt, I can then be grateful for that money because then I can use that to invest in other clients. So rather than it being like there's an absolute price for, and this I think specifically for service businesses, with product business might be a bit more challenging, but particularly for serving a service business where you may be working with, if you're doing purposeful work that you feel like is really about an impact broader than just the money, you can say, okay, I'm grateful for this money that I'm being paid that is more than maybe I normally charge, or it's a higher rate than I've been used to in the past. But that means I now can invest my time and money and my time and energy in people who can't necessarily pay that much money. Still doing the same work, maybe creating even more value for that customer, but I'm investing in them because I believe in the impact that they're making. But
Mhm.
I can only do that if I don't feel like my tank is always empty and I'm able to receive from other
Mhm.
people. So there's this feeling that I feel more powerful to give if I'm more able to receive.
Mhm.
Does that align?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the thing that you're talking about so the kind of prices signal, you took that, taking that idea, prices signal. Oh, but should I charge more? Is it, feeling guilty about that? And then we sort of tell ourselves lots of sort of stories, don't we? Oh no, I've benchmarked myself, or I know what my competitors charge. I already charge quite a lot for what I do. Actually, interestingly, the number of people I speak to who tell me they already charge quite a lot for what they do kind of renders the whole kind of statistic completely useless, because everybody thinks that they charge quite a lot for what they do, or lots of people, we're already at the kind of high end. And I think the thing that you're sort of talking about, you were sort of saying there, that the important point that actually it's not for us to determine the value of something, it's for our clients and customers. And the second session that we get into on the course, which is the general theme of that, is pricing the client, not the job. Because one of the things we do, whatever the thing we do, whether it's, I don't know, providing facilitation or mindfulness training or coaching or whatever it might be, we have an idea. We think we're kind of charging, it might be for the time or whatever it might be. But what we're really keen to kind of help people, the shift that we want people to make is actually kind of pricing a bit more kind of outside in, by walking in the shoes of the people who are buying your products and services, because actually the value of what you do is determined by those people. And in order to understand the value to them, it's important to understand the things that they are buying, which sounds kind of like a stupid thing to say. Like, oh, they're buying this, the what of what I do. They're buying websites in your old case, or design services in my old business, or coaching or facilitation, whatever it might be. But of course, that's not actually what they're buying. They're buying all of these things in service of something else. Everybody's buying something because they want something to change. They want this feeling to turn into that feeling, or they want this problem to be solved in that way. But everybody is buying a change. And so the what of what you do is just a means to get there. It's just the story, it's either, either a utility or some sort of story that the client and customer is telling them that your thing helps make that change. And if you don't understand that change, if you don't understand that motivation, if you don't understand the kind of tangible and intangible thing that a client and customer actually wants to change, then you can never know the value of what you do. And if you don't know the value of what you do, you can never share in that value. And so that's a kind of key part of the journey that we kind of wanting everyone to go on, really.
And that's that. The word that springs to mind is curiosity. And we talked. I call this gratitude and abundance. And if I was going to flip that round in my head, is resentment and scarcity. And so if I go to my client without gratitude. I kind of resent them taking up my time. A potential client, I'm going to resent them taking up my time having to talk about the price, rather than being grateful for them to be interested. And then in that space of, rather than scarcity, I don't have enough time to talk to them, being in a space of abundance where I can be really curious about what it is that they're trying to look for. Not even from the place of, oh, this is a great tactic to turn them into customer. But I'm also thinking it's a great way to think about, if they can't understand the value I'm going to create, or if I can't actually get to that point or clearly see where I can get to the point where we can talk about value, then maybe I shouldn't be spending my time with this person. And it's a great time to say, sorry, it's probably not the right fit. I'm not the right person for you. And you don't waste your time. So I think when we're in that space of fear, the blinkers come on. It's a very narrow kind of focus, rather than when you're curious, you're open, and you can then spot the signals more, whether there are signals of, actually, maybe we should talk about this because this gives my customer a bit more picture of where they can get to and how I can help them. Or actually, I can see this person's already closed down. And I can see there's a resistance even for me talking about it, because there's something about them that's going on that either I spend a lot of time trying to break those beliefs down, or I just say, okay, you're not ready for me yet. Rather than, I'm not good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that last point is really important. And I think the thing that's kind of important about that, or kind of feels important to me, is just it's really important to keep in mind is that obviously most people, right, depending on whatever it is that you sell, most people have no fucking interest in your stuff at all. Like they have no interest in my stuff or anybody else's. Like the reality, of course, is most people are not interested in our stuff. And the goal, of course, is not to try and persuade the uninterested that we're interesting. The goal is to kind of do the work with people who do appreciate what you do, who do understand what you do. And of course, there's some relationship and trust and all those things which need to come into play there. But actually, it's okay and important to kind of say, like you're saying there, no, now is not, clearly we're not aligned at the moment. You customer, you client, me provider, we're not aligned. We're not in a place where we're kind of ready for each other at the moment. And that's okay. That's good. Okay, good. We know that. Let's kind of move on. Let's move on to those people where there is a bit more trust. There is a bit more kind of awareness. And there is a bit more of a kind of understanding of one of the things we look at and teach on the course is this idea that clients and customers are buying only two things. They're buying good feelings and solutions to problems. And the more that you understand that, like I said, the more you can understand the value. But actually, you need kind of trust and curiosity to be able to kind of open that door.
So there's a couple of questions here that maybe we can talk to. And I feel they're related. Saskia and Melanie ask. So Saskia, she talks about the customer feeling like they're in safe and knowledgeable hands. And how that can be related to this idea of imposter syndrome, whether, are we, I'm guessing this is the link there. And then Melanie's talking about the shift into the abundance mindset. How do we practice this? How do we get into that space? I'm wondering if there's anything that we could talk to there, from at least from our own experiences, because caveat, we don't have all the answers. We can't have silver bullets here, but we can hopefully nudge you in the right direction with some thoughts or reflections. So yeah, Ben.
So I guess to Saskia's thing about imposter syndrome and confidence and all of that. Yeah, I mean, confidence is a hugely important signal, because whenever we're buying anything is fraught with huge risks. Basically, there's a little voice chipping away in the heart mind of your customer client, of everybody all the time. Whenever we're about to buy anything, is this going to work? Is it safe? Is it going to do the thing that I want it to do? And so that voice is always kind of going. And our job as the person, the entity, the organization, whatever, who's providing it, is to reassure. And trust is, trust is a hugely important part of that. And confidence is kind of key with that. Now, the thing actually I did when I first read your question there, the person who came to mind, of course, is Amy Cuddy. Is it the fake it till you make it psychologist? And I think there's probably an element of that which obviously talks a little bit more to sort of imposter syndrome thing. But actually, going back again to my own experience, like I mentioned at the beginning about the kind of learning and realization of how important money as a signal was, price as a signal was. But of course, there was a flip with that too. Not a flip. There was a kind of a positive unintended consequence of that. Because in the situation that we had where I had accidentally put my prices up by a lot, and where we'd gone from a situation of not, finding it very difficult to sell what we were doing to actually being much, much easier to buy. That came about because of this price as a signal kind of reality. But of course, the thing that then changed is we went from a situation where selling was quite hard to selling became much easier, which was facilitated by putting our prices up. And of course, as selling became much easier, so our confidence went up. And as our confidence goes up, so again, we become easier and easier and easier to buy. So actually, the kind of playing with prices, one of the things to kind of talk about in the course actually is there should be an element of when you're talking about the kind of money aspects, which is a bit nerve-wracking, which is a little bit there's a little bit of a kind of feeling of discomfort in there, because the chances are you're kind of pushing yourself to a kind of pricing pace, which is challenging you. And the benefit of doing that is price as a signal, but the impact, the kind of the effect on confidence actually is quite kind of material, because you are sending a positive signal to your client and customer. They are then responding back to you. As they respond back to you, so your confidence kind of grows. So there is a kind of positive symbiotic thing going on there.
There's I'm hearing this idea of the attitude you bring to that conversation, the attitude you bring to the people around you when they are looking at wanting help with something. I think one of the way I interpreted your comment there, Saskia, there's when you're starting something for the first time, and if I was particularly a service-based business, you're taking someone like Ben was saying, you're taking from one place to another, and this place could be a problem to the problem going away, or it could be a feeling to a feeling of unpleasant feeling to a good feeling. Whatever. There's a transition. So one of the levels in terms of when I think of imposter syndrome, one thing is like how confident that you can make that help someone through that transition. And I think most people, and the most people we want to talk to on the course and talk to here, is like, you're super confident about that transition. You know that you can take someone from there to there. I know there are some variables that might get in the way, but more often than not, with the right people, you can take someone from there to there. The challenge is then, how much is that worth? And the money that I'm asking them to pay, will they pay that? And how confident am I about the money that I'm going to ask? And that, for me, is the problem that we can tackle. And what Ben was alluding to before is like, if the imposter syndrome is about the number, then that's something around talking to the right customers, understanding what is in that change that is really, really valuable for them. Is it when we're just talking about the journey of, okay, I'll build the website, or I'll do the coaching, I'll do the facilitation, that isn't as powerful as like, suddenly I'm going to get more customers, or suddenly I feel less stressed, or that if you talk to that and then you understand, okay, and there's other stuff that you need to talk to, but once you start narrowing down on that, I think you don't feel like an imposter anymore, because they're telling you what's going to be important for them. They're telling you what's really valuable. And if you know that you can do that, then it's like, okay, well, how much is that worth? How much is that worth to that person? And that could be different for different people. So that's what I've learned from Ben around this whole transition and getting over that imposter syndrome.
And that actually links to then Francis's question too around transparency for the sake of authenticity. And obviously it depends on what people are selling, for sure, because I don't know, in some instances you're selling kind of products which have a sort of price tag to them, and there's quite a lot of relevant things that we talk about that kind of relate to that. If what you're selling in the transparency authenticity thing is there isn't a kind of published kind of price, and the question is the extent to which you should be kind of clear about what people are paying, I kind of point back actually to what you just said there, Carlos, which I think I think, it's good to be transparent, but transparent shouldn't ever mean, I don't think, that everybody necessarily quick caveat, does depend on what you're selling, but making an assumption, I guess, about what you're selling, Francis, transparency doesn't need to mean that everybody pays the same amount. And I think you can be clear with that, because I think if you just took, like what Carlos was just saying there, you could be transparent with a client that says, well, it's interesting because, I work in this instance, this change that a client made, it was worth to them, it was so important, and actually it was worth this level of investment. But another client, they were working on something this and they made this change and it was worth this for them. So what you could be transparent is by setting up this idea that actually, what you're interested in is working with the clients and customers to understand how valuable it is for them and pricing accordingly. I think that's, a real kind of big orientation about what we're trying to kind of get to. And then there's kind of lots of versions of that which come along the way. But I think, this is all about transparency, because it's about understanding value as the client and customer sees it.
Cool. I think Francis gave a bit of a caveat on that, but I just wanted to pick up on this because I think this is quite interesting about, the standardization of your prices, for want of a better word. So in the startup world, when you're starting a totally new business, something quite innovative, they talk about the 3 different stages. There's problem, solution, fit, product market fit, then scale. And I believe, where we are talking to is that product market fit point. And particularly in a service business, I think you're always trying to work out, you have the freedom, nearly the possibility to play with what is the price that people will pay for this thing, because it can be quite variable. But at some point, maybe you start saying, all right, I get, I've done this for so many years. I know the journey quite well. I know exactly what it is how people view the value of this. I've got a real clear idea of who my customer is. And then you can standardize your price, and then you can kind of scale, you can start selling a bit more. But if you're always in that space of actually, I do things slightly different each time, maybe the customer gets some, it's more of a creative space, then I think it's important not to get too fixated on, okay, what is the price of the stuff that I do? Because like an artist who does paintings, it's always different, the value of that painting to different people. And I think that's a really important, for me anyway, important thing to help me just ground actually, what does it mean to be transparent? Well, it means, to be honest, that this is an emergent creative process that could create different levels of value depending on where you're at and what you're trying to do. And I'm a facilitator in generating that value. And so you're lucky that I'm actually a bit flexible. But, as with all investments, they can go up and they go down in terms of the amount of return you get. And I think that for me is the part of that release from being fixed. Oh, this is what pricing is about in terms of hard numbers. And it's all very, very rigid, I think. And that's where maybe the transparency thing. So Frances, she's qualified a bit as well. She said, transparent about your relationship with pricing.
So I'm conscious of time, but I just wonder whether if Francis wants to, we could have a quick couple of minutes sort of chat if Francis is feeling like stepping into the room.
Good point, Francis. If you are in a position to say hello and just qualify your question, please say something in the chat. I know sometimes you might be, people watching might be caught up with other things. I think Kate last time would just come back from a run, so she was in her running gear. And we'll see if Francis is able to join us. Not seeing anything in the chat. Okay. Maybe we can make a little bit of an assumption for now. He's going to put on another episode of Lego Spider-Man for the 3-year-old.
Why don't we all just go to Lego Spider-Man?
You can share your screen, Francis, with Lego Spider-Man. Then we can actually talk to that. Okay. So while we're waiting for Francis to join us, Melanie's asking, do you first need confidence with respect or have a better relationship with money and be an abundance mindset to confidently propose higher prices? Ooh.
No, for me, it worked the other way around. I accidentally put my prices up, and maybe that was helpful that I accidentally did that. But in accidentally putting our price up by a lot, and I, can share the story at another time. But when I was running my last business, I did put the prices up a lot when I was talking to a prospective client, and they bought what we were doing straight away. And that really kind of was a big kind of wake up moment. It's like, what's actually happening with this? And the confidence then really flowed. And then as the confidence flowed, so then we came to, we felt differently about our work. So we felt differently. So the market felt differently, customers felt differently, which gave us a kind of ease and a bit more kind of, it kind of meant that we were kind of coming to all of these things more creatively, with more abundance, with a kind of more easeful feeling. So for me, it very much happened the other way around.
Another way from when I think about that question is whether when we take a linear approach to this journey and we say, I need to do A, then B, then C. And I think what Ben did was, stumbled into this awareness of what pricing actually means. And so I think also if we spend a lot of time just trying to tackle A before we go on to B, it could be a tough journey. And I think particularly around business building and finding value, we kind of discover our triggers as we go along and have to process them while we do it, rather than spend some time dealing with those first. So it's a tricky one there, I think. And I find this with the 2020 Vision Program is like, while we spend some time thinking about, even talking about purpose and talking about, values and stuff like that, that should not hold us back from just making a messy step forward. Because I think even that messy step forward informs us on the values and the stories and the things that stop us. Oh, I think Ben's got a book he's going to share.
I was just, the thing which was coming to mind as you're talking, I can't see it, is the War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. Because of course, a lot of potential, the risk is, of course, we try and work all of these things out, but all we're really doing is putting off the doing, which just, kind of sort of reiterates, I think, what you were saying, Carlos. Actually taking the messy step and sort of learning and evolving and responding does give us the confidence. And as we have the confidence, so it goes.
I think the two words that jump out as me is failure and rejection. And this is, I think, one of the most challenging things around the money stuff and the pricing. And
selling.
And selling, exactly. Just offering something out there, saying, okay, this is it. And then suddenly what that feels like when someone says, no, don't want it.
Or what happens normally is they just ignore.
Or ignore, even worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, okay, no one's interested in this. No one's interested in me. I'm not valuable. And I think while we can spend some time doing deep work on that, it feels like part of it as well is just stepping out and just doing it. And I think maybe the answer to this isn't so much, okay, tackle these stories, read this book, do this thing. I believe, and this is why the community exists, is finding other people who experience the same thing and doing it together.
Yeah.
Getting the support, getting the courage, whenever you're down, having someone else to pick you up, or whenever you're a bit of doubt, having someone be able to say, yep, I'm feeling exactly the same thing. It's shit, but we just do it anyway. So there, that's what I could offer to you there, Melanie. I hope that's of help. And now we have Francis. Welcome. Excellent. You can also do a running commentary of how Lego Spider-Man's going.
We'll see how long it lasts.
No worries.
Hear me?
Yeah. Yes. So elaborate a bit more on your question.
Yeah, really briefly. It's just that I'm keen on being as kind of honest as possible, not least because I'm kind of iterating as I go alongside my clients, and they will have lots of conundrums themselves around pricing, I'm sure. So for me to be able to say, it's really interesting to think about one's relationship with money, isn't it? For example, I'm just starting out, so I don't want to charge you a fortune because I'm not, I'm still kind of working out what my value is to you, and I really appreciate your feedback. But I do need, I've made some calculations as to what I think my time is, not what my time is worth, but what the outcome for you is. And it's interesting for me to share that with you to see how you feel and see how it fits with you as a price, because it's really useful feedback, but also because I'd invite you to think and use me to soundboard, think about, pricing for yourself and how that makes you feel. So that's the kind of root of my interest in your thoughts on that one.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. So I will keep it brief, because Lego Batman, Superman, whatever, only has a certain pull. I totally hear that.
I should say, I can listen to you. It's more that I don't want you guys to have so I can mute myself and I'll go, obviously.
Oh, no, it's totally fine. I think so 2 weeks ago, I was actually joined in the room by my 6-year-old, who was trying to tell me that Simon Cowell was on Horrible Histories. So there you go. The way these things kind of roll. So I think the transparency is kind of important, and the transparency is useful, because I think what we're talking about, actually everything that we're really interested in on the course is how you have those conversations with your clients that help them tease out what the value is. And so kind of sharing some of your insights might be a helpful way of doing that. But actually a lot of what we're kind of interested in is how you have those conversations, which help the client start to understand, help your customers understand what the value is to them. Because what can happen if you basically say, I've given some thought and I'm thinking it's this, if you feed that to the client, then that is going to frame what they think. And that might be useful, but it also might be a hindrance, because it might be the assumption that you make about the value actually is wildly different and could be much lower than the actual value to them. And so a lot of what we're interested in looking at is the conversations, the questions that you can ask, the conversations that you can have, which kind of allow you to sort of tease that out. And I think as a sort of general rule, the longer you can spend in conversation, the longer you can spend in dialogue, almost certainly the higher the price, the higher the value the client will see. Because what tends to happen is we rush quite quickly to putting a number on things, because everyone's trying to get ambiguity out the way, because nobody likes the ambiguity. Customers don't like it. We don't like it. So we rush to remove ambiguity and we put a figure on things, because everybody's expecting that it's a kind of way that kind of removes it. But in doing that, we're shutting down the value conversation. And I think the thing that we're interested in is practicing to kind of keep that open, to keep that live for as long as possible.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Another element of this is the kind of what you talk about, Ben, is experimentation. And the way I heard you talk, Francis, there's an assumption. You can make an assumption of what the value is, and you can boldly stand by the assumption. And then the conversation is then seeing, okay, does that assumption hold? And if it does hold, and you're still early stage, you can still have that value. So, all right, it's worth 2,000, but because we're new and because we're starting, I'm going to do it for 1,000. But you don't say it's 1,000. This is the thing I'm learning about. It's like you're trying to work out where in this bracket you're working, and particularly this early stage where I see you at the boundary between problem solution fit and product market fit. You're maybe designing the solutions based on the customer, and at the same time trying to test out their appetite to buy, and at the same time maybe trying to find out who's your perfect customer, while at the same time thinking, how much do I want to earn? And that's where that messy aspect of it isn't A, B, C, D. It's like a kind of a symbiotic relationship between these things that is an emergent process rather than a step-by-step one. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's so useful. And it speaks to something I was tempted to ask you guys, but I'm sure it's kind of what you answer on the course, which is, do you have this kind of headline equation that you can offer, which allows everyone to put into the computer all of that stuff that you're weighing up, and out comes the answer? What's the equation that allows you to go, all right, you're talking about trust before Carlos, and it's kind of like feeling guilty around charging too much. And if you just put all of those feelings in, plus what you need to earn to survive and to thrive as a company, what is the outcome in terms of what the price should be? But I guess that's what the course is.
We're building the AI app, which will be £10,000. We're just getting our Indian developers on the case. Well, yeah, no, I totally get you. I think it's worth thinking about because there is something around the model, at least a model for a conversation, not necessarily a formula that then plugs out and outputs a number, because it feels like that's the different interactions that you're having to deal with at that stage anyway.
And in a way, what we are teaching, of course, is a framework, right? So it's not a sort of online calculator that says I put this trust in and that worry in and this idea and this client and that's the figure. Because the thing, we are teaching a framework but it is about kind of fluidity. And in fact, actually the framework almost kind of knows, it kind of is almost, you can go into infinite depth because, you know, the more you talk, the more you understand the good feelings and problems that a client is solving, the better you understand that, the richer your understanding of it, which of course, the important thing is this is all about them. So this isn't about your worry or your feeling of value or your expectation of earning. This is about their understanding. And so the more you have that, there is a sort of AI, but it exists in your head, which says, if I ask the questions in these ways, learn these things, and I'm exploring and talking about money with them, you are going to arrive at a point that says, this is what this is worth to me, the customer. And that is what we're sort of talking about, yeah.
And I suppose that's really a great thing to have achieved, because then there's this consciousness for the customer where perhaps there may not have been before, a certainty as to, yes, this was a really good idea. And I'm really grateful that we've talked about why in relation to how much I'm paying for it. And so it's not just here's my reason for, and are you okay with that? And are we all good? You know, that kind of really
everything okay?
Everything all right? But it's more of that sort of proactive, and this really answers my question, so thank you. It's kind of, here's why I'm going to talk about pricing, to, you know, to kind of have you walk away and really understand this for yourself, so that you understand further why you've entered into this transaction with me in the first place. I hope that serves you as much as the service itself. So it's that kind of meta level of, you came to me for this, I'm going to give it to you, and here's why I'm pricing this way. Do you understand? Yeah, okay, cool, great. Come back or send someone else to me. That makes sense. Makes good. Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. That's really been useful. Catch you later.
Bye.
That's really good. I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you found that useful. Thank you. Oh, I'm going to try and pronounce your name, Cloda, for your comment. She likes the phrase "define your enough." I think that is another variable in all of this stuff. That again, it's a practice, and it comes through conversation, and it comes through knowing what to talk about and what to think about. So, if you're interested in this stuff, if you're not already signed up to the mailing list, please click on the link in the middle of your Crowdcast window to sign up. You'll get the canvas and you'll get the manifesto, and you'll get emails from us about when the next
what's not to like.
Exactly. And then when we're going to be doing another cohort of the Happy Pricing course in the coming weeks. We'll let you know when that's happening, when the registration opens. And so if this is something you want to do, and again, this is about a practice and losing a framework and doing this in a way that actually brings in lots of these variables without getting overwhelmed. If you want to do that together, sign up again to the list, and we'll let you know when that's ready to go. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, everybody. Very good to have a sort of multi-way conversation. Really appreciate people joining us and sharing their questions as we go. It makes it all the more enjoyable.
Yeah, and it helps us, try and think more clearly to help you, so that we can express these ideas in a way that actually lands and actually creates an impact. I'm off to go and watch some Lego Spider-Man.
Yeah, me too.
Until next week. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.